closing, and I didn't want to leave, but he went way beyond the amount of time he should have spent on that. He spent over an hour on it, and still, he may still be doing it. So, but it's a high dollar program. You know, I think the low program is they're at doing 59,000 to 120,000.
So do you have a pack your bag moment yet?
I don't even know what that means, James.
You don't know what a pack your bag moment? That was from Hero. When we went to Florida, pack your bag. That's like, okay, I got, this is the one big thing I got. I can pack my bags and I can leave. So
no, there's quite a few things. It was good to go over the numbers, you know, because the numbers really kind of spell it out. And I think that we need to add this to part of our exit strategy. I think once we get these 5 up and running, we'll have a much better handle on it. But I think you can't ignore it. It's too big of an industry to ignore. But it was kind of cool because I could walk in these properties and tell instantly what was done, how it was done, and some things that could be improved. But I mean, the guys that are doing them are doing a pretty good job. The good thing too is I've stayed probably in 30 Airbnbs by now, and I've been to 3 or 4 trainings. So it's like 6 years of dancing. It's time to just go full speed. And I've got 7 people working on getting those 5 Airbnbs up. I'm going to try to get them all up in 60 days. And I'm hoping for less than that.
I think it would be good that once you do get those up and running, that we maybe, you know, do something centered around that, whether it be one of the live trainings or, you know, a radio show. We talk about it, but we kind of go into depth and talk about Airbnb. You
know, I've had almost every exit strategy. I've done almost every exit strategy there is except Airbnb. And this one is, we're going to go big time because we're literally going to put 5 of them online. I think I've done every other one, just about every other one that you can do. But this will be good. And I'm pretty convinced the numbers make sense. And it's just the right timing for us because we have that log cabin became available. The house in Galveston became available. The garage apartment came available. Crystal Beach, which is a beach house that we're literally 1 week from having finished because we did a major rehab on that. We took a crappy little beach house and literally gutted it and just optimized every square inch of that thing to get the most amount of living space out of it because it's up on stilts, you know, and everything you do on stilts, you're fighting for square footage, and that square footage price is a lot higher than something, you know, built on the ground. So this will be a good tour. We maybe what we'll do is one Saturday we'll just get up early once we get them all up online and just do kind of a tour of all of them and look at the numbers.
Yeah,
but I think we'll be able to hit 3 times to 4 times what the rent amount would be. I think I can see right now that, and this is where coaching is so valuable. I can see that we need to not just come by these properties by accident. We need to pick the properties as best we can.
Yeah,
it's picking the properties. And I learned this with rent houses. A rent house is not something you can tell by looking at it. You got to really make that. It's really based, whether it's a good one or not, relies a lot on reliability, risk, and what the net income is. You know, so different factors to play with that net income number. So, well, it's 6:05. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's 6:05. I wanted to give people a chance to get on, get settled in. I want to give them a chance to get their pen and paper so they can take notes. This is our weekly live training. And if you're jumping in or you've been there from the beginning, me and Ray are talking about a seminar that he's at this week. I think it's a 3.5 day seminar on Airbnb. And Ray is getting really excited about that. He's got probably, I think, 5 that he's trying to get up online within the next, few weeks, several
60
weeks.
days. We're going to try to get all 5 of them online within 60 days.
So stay tuned. When those go up, he's really excited about it. We're probably going to have some sort of, training or tour or something of it that we will let you know in advance, so you'll be able to attend those. So let's go ahead and get started.
Hey, James, can I just interrupt on that? What I'd love to do is we're just going to kind of make it like a journal where we just kind of update it every couple of weeks and talk about the lessons we learned. We're not coming into this totally ignorant, because we've been doing the real estate business and we know of rehabbing, we know how to get work done, and we know how to qualify people. But I think we'll just make it like a journal thing where they can take the journey with us as we open these things up and go through them and learn, literally starting from no experience on the Airbnb side of it, and just share our experiences and hopefully help people avoid some of the mistakes they might make.
Yeah, this would be a good exit strategy to have in your arsenal. But we'll keep you guys posted on that. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight. We're going to be talking about a couple of factors. I think there's 5 of them that we've chose. Factors in power of negotiating. And our hope is, we always talk about, hey, go find leads, but hopefully tonight we can give you some foundation points that will help you capture those leads and keep those leads and not just throw them away in the first, conversation that you have. So it's a very good topic that we're going to talk about tonight. And in fact, we'll probably continue a little bit into our open coaching call for tomorrow night. Our coaching is typically done on Tuesday nights, but our local baseball team was in the World Series. It was a heartbreaker last night, but we postponed, and we're going to do our open coaching call tomorrow night. If you have not received an invite to that and you have not been on one of our coaching calls, send a message, drop a comment, and let me know, and I'll make sure that you get invited. While you're putting a comment, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're a wholesaler, if you're a flipper, if you've done Airbnb, you have interest, let us know, and we'll be reaching out and giving you some information on that. But let's go ahead and get started. Our first one, grab a pen. And if we have a volunteer, put these in the comments. The first one is going to be alternative. That's going to be the first factor in negotiations, is alternative. So you want to go ahead and take over, Ray?
Yeah, thank you, James. And by the way, guys, I'm sitting in the parking garage of the Galleria Mall because there's no way I could do this and drive through Houston rush hour traffic. And the class just ended. So to set it up for tonight, what we want to do is we teach a negotiation class. And I learned a long time ago that I lost, 30 years ago, I learned this lesson. I lost deals because I didn't know how to negotiate. Deals would just slip through my fingers, and then I'd get mad, or I'd usually myself, but I didn't have the ability to make them come together. I didn't know what the pieces were. I remember I lost a 350 unit apartment complex because I was way out of my league and I didn't understand it. I lost a 172 unit mobile home park, and I thought it was some evil scheme by the realtor, the mean realtors, and I didn't know how to play the game. I didn't know what the rules were. And so I've been very passionate about becoming a great negotiator for 30 plus years, because not knowing how to be successful and convert deals is the difference between staying in business and going out of business. And if you're a wholesaler and you don't know how to put the deals together, you don't know how to set them up creatively, you don't know how to come up with other ways of closing the deals, alternatives, which is our first power factor. If you don't know how to overcome those issues, then you're not going to be near successful as a person that does. In fact, there's a point, like a tipping point in any business where you have to have a certain amount of success or you just go out of business. You always got a gun to your head when you're starting out, for sure. You don't have the resources. You may not have the time. It may be a test, you got 6 months to get this together. So there's always limitations. And so we've got to figure out how to be successful as quick as possible. And negotiation is, your ability to negotiate is such an important part of that. To not know how big a part of it, to not understand, not to be good at it, and not to understand how to do it, just means you're setting yourself up for failure. So I've been a student in negotiation for 30 years. I've got lots and lots of information. Charles and I sometimes will teach about once a year. We'll teach a 2-day class. It's a blast. I mean, we always get 5-star reviews from it. And because I'm so passionate about it, and Charles is so passionate about it, we just learned the hard way. We make a lot more money when we have a plan and we know what to negotiate. I came along something that Dr. Henning wrote called the 10 power fundamentals. I think they're called the 10 power fundamentals in negotiating. And tonight we're going to talk about 2 of them a lot, and we'll talk about 2 or 3 of them real quick. We won't go into a lot of detail, but we'll talk about 2 or 3 of them in a lot of detail. And I think the first one, so there's 10 of them. Name them off real quick. We don't need to write them down, but just so people know what they are. And then we're going to hit 3 of them pretty hard and a couple of them pretty soft.
Okay. Alternative, legitimacy, risk, commitment, knowledge, expert, reward, time, perception, and relationship.
Yeah, so you need to know all of these, because all of these come into play in your negotiation at some point or time. Maybe not all 10 will come into every negotiation, but there's a potential that they exist in the negotiation. And you need to know, like when you're putting your negotiation together, or you're kind of thinking about how to set it up, you need to know what these 10 things are. You need to I love the fact that there's a vocabulary word for them. Just like closing, there's a closing that we have, like, one of the things that we prepared and we ended up using, we have about 135 different negotiation strategies and tactics that I've picked up from other people. I've learned from them. And I just thought, I'm going to write these down and put them in terms that make sense for me based on my experience. And so we got way over 100 of them. And there's things like the call girl close, or the Columbo close, or the trial close. When you start putting vocabulary words on these things, then you can actually, it's like having a tag that you can just reach into your brain anytime you need it. And you say, yeah, this is what I need to be doing. Or there's a thing in negotiation called nibbling. Well, what is nibbling? When do you use nibbling? And most people don't even know what nibbling is. They don't even know what the tactic is. But once the tactic is explained to you, and then you put a name on it, then when you're sitting there negotiating, those things will come back to your mind, and then you'll think, oh yeah, this is a time to do the nibble. So in the power factors in a negotiation by Dr. Henning, these 10 things are super important. You need to understand them. They're almost all of them are in every negotiation or every issue that we're going to be dealing with. So we decided we'd talk about 3 or 4 of these, and then some later, like a coaching call, we'll talk about the rest of them. Or if we put together a negotiation class, it'll definitely be part of a negotiation class. So the first one was alternatives. And what that means is the people who have alternatives are usually going to prevail in a negotiation. And I don't care if it's a hostage negotiation, or a spousal dispute, or a real estate transaction. The person that's got more options is usually going to have a better outcome than the person that doesn't have more options. And like, for example, in the most simplest form, a lot of people think that, and this is where, like, say you're a beginning wholesaler, you're just getting into real estate, you might be under the mistaken impression that people just want the money. They just want cash. And in reality, a lot of people, in fact, the more sophisticated they are, the less likely that they're going to want cash. So if you go to the person and your solution is cash and you don't have any other alternatives, you're probably not going to do as good as, say, somebody like me that's going to go in there and say, look, let's get some information. And one of the ones we're going to talk about is knowledge. Okay, that's another one, knowledge. Let's get some knowledge about what the facts are, what the facts are of the deal. What are the facts of the issues? What are the facts that relate to this particular situation? And if you can do that, then that knowledge gives you power in the negotiation. And what you might find out is that it also helps define better alternatives than offering, say, all cash. Because all cash, a lot of times, especially if you're going to put the property under contract and then turn around and sell it to somebody else, selling it under the terms of all cash is not the way to go. I mean, it's not the best way. It's not almost never the best way. There's almost always a better way than just giving somebody cash. So the person with alternatives has a decided advantage and can better serve the person on the other side, because this win-win concept, which, whether you believe in it or not, the more you can get the closer you can get to what their needs are, the more likely you are to get yes to getting the outcome that you want. So alternatives. And what are some of the alternatives? In fact, this is a true story. A guy that we work with, a wholesaler, says he's trying to buy a property, needs $40,000 down as gap funding. Should we explain gap funding, James?
Yeah, I would touch on it and explain it.
Well, gap funding it comes up often when you're trying to buy properties. Gap funding means, hey, I can borrow the money, but they're not going to give me quite enough money to close with. And there's 4 or 5 legitimate reasons why buyer can't get all the money. Okay. It has to do with risk of the lender and stuff like that. So gap funding, there's a big need for gap funding. And if you can fill that need, you can make a lot of money as an investor just by being in the gap funding market. And there are people that just particularly focus on gap funding. So you might be able to get, let's say in the gap funding, you might get $200,000, but you still might be $40,000 short. And if you can do the $40,000 short, then the next thing you know, you can buy, fix, and flip that house, or buy, fix, and hold the house, or whatever. So managing and understanding how to do the gap funding is important. So as a coach, or as somebody is trying to do creative deals, we might want to know how to manage gap funding. So, and basically gap funding just means, I'm probably talking way too much about what gap funding is, but gap funding just means that you need to get that money. But the person that puts up the gap funding money is in a high risk position. So I went to this guy that was asking for this person that would do second liens, which is what gap funding typically is. And I said, well, why not, instead of doing gap funding, why not, since it's a sub 2, you should be probably buying it in a trust. If you're buying it in a trust, just give the person that's putting up the gap funding, sell them the beneficial interest to the trust for $1, and then take an option back to buy that beneficial interest back. Well, first of all, it's not $1. In this case, it's $40,000. So sell them the beneficial interest for $40,000, and then agree to buy that beneficial interest back, and an option to buy that beneficial interest back for $40,000 plus interest. So what you've just accomplished is you've taken that lender out of being the second lender, and now making him the owner temporarily. Well, his risk goes way, way down. And so it's a lot easier for somebody to say, hey, I'll do that, because I'm not in the second lien position. I'm in control. I'm the owner of this. If you, the borrower, don't want to perform, I'm the owner. I'm not going to let you exercise the option. So, and it's maybe a little convoluted, but what happened there is that's an alternative. I just created an alternative, and I just put a deal together that maybe he could never put together on his own. So we just made a deal happen just because we moved the pieces around. So coming up with alternatives gives you real power in a negotiation. And you have to become a student, or you have to have good friends that you can buy lunch for occasionally and say, okay, James, what would you do in this case? And James says, well, here's another way of putting it together. We'll reduce the risk of the person putting up the gap funding. Then they're more likely to say yes. So alternative power is a real power. And so that means in order to have power on the outcome of the negotiation, you have to know alternatives. And in fact, you have to know everything of those 10 that you just listed. You have to know how to control and manage all 10 of those things. So that's alternatives. How'd we do? Probably too deep on the rabbit hole on the alternative, one of the alternatives. But there's 50 alternatives at any given time. There's 75 alternatives, and you got to be kind of a free thinker on this, and also have some experience and have some friends who have experience, because they can say, well, why don't you just do this? And this is the guy that came up with this. He's a wholesaler. I think he's done a couple hundred deals, and he just doesn't understand all the power of alternatives. He never learned it because he didn't realize that that's causing him deals. And all of a sudden now he's desperate because he can't put a deal together.
So the second one on our list is knowledge. I know that you touched on it. Did you cover everything on knowledge that you wanted to? Okay.
No,
Before I let you keep talking, let's get a volunteer to drop that in the comments, knowledge. And then the other thing that I wanted to remind you guys is anytime that we're talking, and you come up with a question, drop it in the comments. And then at the end, Hal is going to let us know. We're going to save about 5 minutes, maybe 10, but roughly around 5 minutes. We're going to answer a couple of questions. And our producer, Hal, which is behind the scenes, he'll let us know what questions are coming in. So Ray, go ahead and take it over for knowledge.
So under the category knowledge, there's two areas of knowledge. There's knowledge of the deal or the problem. That's one knowledge. And then there's knowledge that you get on how to overcome those deals. Just like I gave an alternative just a minute ago of a different way to solve that problem with the wholesaler, how he can get that 40,000. So having knowledge of how the transaction is supposed to go, having knowledge of what the alternatives are, that's one kind of knowledge. But then the other kind of knowledge is the specific information that relates to the position of the seller or the buyer, whoever it is that you're negotiating with. So you got to have specific deal knowledge. It's sort of like being a spy, for an army, right? Every army has spies, and the purpose of the spies is to gather knowledge. I mean, just think of the Civil War days. They had the guys on the horses that could move real fast, and they could check out the deployment of the enemy and where basically the cavalry, and they could find out where they were. So they would move around real quick, and they would say, hey, we've got 1,000 troops coming from this direction. We got artillery coming from over here. Where's the weakness in their line? So information, anytime you're going to go into battle or anytime you're going to go into negotiation, you need to have information. And anybody that's been with me when we're putting together a deal, you'll find out I ask a lot of questions besides just what are the numbers on the house. We'll start there because there's no need to go any deeper in that. But then we'll say, well, why is the seller selling? What is the seller trying to accomplish? What are the time limits? And if you recall, one of the power fundamentals was time, right? So we want to get that knowledge of what they're up against, what our timetable is, how fast we have to move, what do we have to do to satisfy the needs of all the parties involved. So that's another kind of knowledge. And both of those things are important. Now, you can't wake up tomorrow and know 1,000 different ways to do something. I mean, it just takes experience, and you just got to get a few of these things under your belt, and you got to be hanging out with the right people who have that experience. And that's why we're so big in the Real Estate Investor Association, because it puts people together from all walks of life who have all kinds of experience, and you can tap into that experience. If you've got a coach or you got a partner, you can do the same thing. But it's important, when we say leverage, for example, we can leverage time, we can leverage money, we can leverage other people's labor, we can leverage knowledge, right? So when you go hire a doctor, you go hire that attorney that specializes in HOA foreclosures, and you just had a HOA screw up or problem. Well, now you leverage that guy's knowledge, and you don't have to spend 5 years figuring out something, because he can just say, like this recently happened to us. He says, here's how you put it together. Boom, boom, boom. So we pick up the phone. We say, here's the problem. He says, here's the solution. And we sail right through it. Everything works like unbelievably well, so unbelievably well. It's just like, how can such a difficult problem just go away? And it's because we're leveraging the right knowledge in that particular case. So knowledge is, you're not going to learn overnight knowledge, but you can leverage knowledge overnight if you know the right people to go to. If you don't know anything, you might go to an attorney that's, whatever, a health attorney or a eviction attorney, and what you need is a title attorney. So you got to have some knowledge to leverage into better knowledge, but anything's better than nothing. And so knowledge is real important, and leveraging that knowledge is really important. And then getting specific knowledge. Now, with scripts, which we go over our scripts in our coaching call, and if somebody's a new member to this group, we invite them to at least one coaching call. A lot of times we'll spend a lot of time on the scripts. In fact, James and I were doing role playing on something that was pretty complicated the other day, and neither one of us were an expert at it, but we just took turns doing the role playing. And I would say every time we did the role playing, we identified new issues, we identified a better way to do it, and we just instantly, literally in 30 minutes or 45 minutes, with us both taking turns role playing, we both got better quickly. So with our scripts, that knowledge will help us stay out of trouble, because you just kind of stick to the script. If you stick to the script, it's going to ask the right questions. Now, you may not know how to use the answers to those questions, but the goal of the script is to get you that knowledge. Like, oh, they're about to lose the house. Well, if I would have said, how soon are you looking to close? I would have found out right away, hey, their time is an issue, right? So now we got to work with the time problem. I've been going back and forth with a wholesaler for a month on a deal. I gave her a price, and she just disappeared, and then she come back and hit me with a new price, and they hit me with a new price. She's running out of time. She's just jacking around. And I told her what my price was, and she's shopping it and doing everything else. Well, now she needs to close on the 5th. And that's the way it works. And I know, as a buyer, I know time works against the wholesaler. Now, if they give me the right price up front and it's a good deal, I'm going to be on it. But, they come in at a price of $150,000, and I'm saying, no, the right price for this is $95,000. Now we've gone down from $140,000 to $120,000 to $110,000 to now it's $95,000. Can you close in 4 days? And I said, probably. And she said, well, will you do 98? I said, well, no, I'm not going to do 98. So, but I know time is not their friend, right? So that's a negotiation tactic.
All right. So is that it on time?
No, knowledge. That was knowledge. So yeah, knowledge is knowing two things. One is how to do things, right? Like, how does the process work? What's the opportunities? How to structure it? That's one knowledge. The second part of knowledge comes into specific deal parameters. Like, what are the parameters to this deal? What's the parameters to the seller? what is it what's the intel of what's going on? What is going to make this person say yes?
Okay. So we've covered alternative, we've covered knowledge. Our next one, we do have time on the list, but our next one is expert. And just to let you know, Ray, we got about 20 minutes left, and then we're going to open it up for questions if there's any that come in. So you want to talk about expert or time?
Well, the time, we talk real quickly about both of them, but we won't talk a lot about it. But knowing what the timetables that people are working under is real important. You may not realize this, but most hard negotiations end and about between 90% of all negotiations end in about 5 minutes to 0 minutes of the deadline. I mean, so it could be out there 2 months, but until it gets to that 5 minute, whatever that perceived, because perceived, and that's another power fundamental on that list, but perceived truth is truth. So if you can do wait down until the time is about up, well, you're probably going to have a lot better control over the outcome. And this is also where a lot of people are not don't wanters, right? They're wanters. And so they are ready to fold up and take the deal way before it's time, right? And so as an experienced negotiator that's not almost always a don't wanter, then I'm getting the offers I want because I'm willing to take that down between the 5 minute and the 0 minute time. And a person that's not a don't wanter, like somebody's just beginning to invest, they're not going to take that risk. They're not going to go down to that last 5 minutes where the best deals are made, right? That's where the hard concessions are made. That's where people have to compromise. You know, like, hey, court's about to happen in 5 minutes. Are we going to settle or what? Well, they almost always going to settle before court starts.
Or the most popular one, the foreclosure. In Texas, the foreclosure will happen on the first Tuesday of the month. But you'll be talking to these sellers that are in the pre-foreclosure process, and they won't give you the time of day. And then they call you, Friday afternoon or Monday morning. Okay, hey, I'm ready to sell. Can we do this? And there's actually been times that you've actually stopped it the morning of the auction.
Yeah. At the auction, we stopped it. And if you understand how the time works, you become a much more effective negotiator. And what happens with inexperienced negotiators, they don't have a broad enough base of opportunities that they're desperate to take any opportunity. And that there's no way if you've been doing this for 5 years or 3 years and you unless you're doing 100 transactions a year or 200 transactions, there's no way I can get that through your head. You're just not going to believe me. But at some point, it might be a year after you start, 5 years or 15 years, you're going to see that your deals, you start having more deals and you start getting better deals because you understand the power of time and you understand the power of being a don't wanter.
So let's talk about relationship. This is going to be the last one on our list: alternative, knowledge, expert, time, perception, and then relationship. So let's go ahead and talk about relationships. And guys, again, questions. This group and our YouTube channel and our RIAs, we're building this to be for investors by investors. And, we want this to be the best. This is not your average community. We want to be able to answer your questions. You have questions, bring them to us and let us answer them and help you. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The more engagement that we have, the better everybody benefits from it.
Well, and we are always looking for partners, and we do group coaching, but we'd love to have partners because we get a lot of deal flow. Sometimes they'll find deals. Sometimes we can be lenders in the deals. the more people are doing deals around you, the more you have opportunities to make more deals. And oftentimes, if people just know that you're there for them, if they can't handle a deal, they'll turn it over to you. Sometimes just helping somebody out, just like me helping that wholesaler out, give him another alternative, he might keep me on his short list of people to take care of me. So far, he's been a taker, but takers also become givers. So we're definitely interested in doing more real estate transactions. So we're always looking for partners to work with. The relationships really is probably the single most important thing on the list, in my opinion. The people that somebody said know, trust, and like, I just cannot get that out of my vocabulary, because it just seems to come up in every conversation. If people know you, trust you, and like you, they're going to let you have a free hand a lot of times. And that trust doesn't come at a low price, right? In order to get real trust from somebody, you've got to have some bona fides. You've got to prove what you're doing. You have to have a reputation. But your goal is to get people to know, trust, and like you as quick as you can. And sometimes you only have 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 years or 10 years. But people, if they trust you and they know you and they like you, they're going to want to do business with you now and later. One of the things we were talking, I don't know if anybody heard us before we really got started. We're talking about Airbnbs. People oftentimes will rent the same Airbnb over and over. They might do it once a year or might do it 10 times. What's the customer lifetime value of somebody, right? If you buy a property from somebody, how often are they going to come back and sell you another property? If you're a realtor, how often are you going to get the same people to go through you? And hold on, let me just one second. Anyway, I don't know. I can't see you. Can you see me, James?
No, your video is off.
Okay, let me just give me a second. Okay. Yeah. So if people know you and trust you and like you, it has a great value. It makes life a lot more fun, because it doesn't have negotiations. Win-wins can really exist, and they don't have to be adversarial. I got pulled over by a cop the other day in an area I've never been, going 47 miles an hour, and it was 30 mile an hour speed limit. You were with me, right, James?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I made a joke, and I think the guy knew and trusted me and liked me immediately, because I wasn't threatening to him. I wasn't giving him a hard time, and then he just lets us off with a warning. And I think that people will take care of you if you just are nice enough to them to let them take care of you, and they'll look out for you. And that's what you got to do. So relationships are really important, and it doesn't just stop there. It's like, I can't tell you how many times people have offered me deals. They just literally say, "Here's this, Ray. I can't take care of it," or, "Hey, Ray, here's this. If you make money, then pay me. If you don't make money, then don't pay me." So the relationship's everything. You just got to build it. And as an introvert, by the way, I just got to throw this. Anytime there's an introvert aspect to anything we're talking about, I want to throw that in there, because I feel like from the time I was literally 10 years old to the time I was about 50 years old, being an introvert really was hard for me to overcome. And I've really overcome it now. But I felt like for that 40 years, I had handcuffs on or straight jacket on. And I felt like I wanted to do so much, but I couldn't do it because I was an introvert. And so as an introvert, you've got to fight this. People, if you go into a crowded room and you don't say anything because I'm an introvert, people read that they read that body language, and they say, that person doesn't like me. And that is the last thing. If you're an introvert, that's not it at all, right? But that's the message you're telling them. That's the translation to that. So if you're an introvert, just a caveat emptor, you've got to fight that, You got to force yourself to smile. You got to force yourself to talk to people. You got to force yourself to shake hands with people, because the last thing you can afford to do is to tell the people around you that you don't like them. And I try hard, and sometimes I'm strong enough to overcome it, and I'm willing to go out and meet those people and talk to them and go out of my comfort zone. And sometimes I'm not, because we're all human. So, but if you're an introvert, be very careful, because you've got to make people know you, trust you, and like you. And the only way you can do that is to be nice to them, right? You got to go out of your way to acknowledge that they're there. You got to show to them that they're important to you, and you got to believe that they're important to you. You never know when somebody's going to save your life or where they're going to stop something from happening. I was watching a stupid video on Facebook, and a guy walks in with a gun, and and this guy standing in line, an ex-Marine, and he just turns around, grabs a gun from the guy, and starts beating him over the head with a bag. You know what I mean? It was almost scripted. And like, I wouldn't probably given that guy standing in line the time of the day, but that guy just saved himself and everybody else in there from who knows what was going to happen. And he just reached around and grabbed the gun. And you never know who your allies are. And I've learned, when you get older, you learn a lot of times people can sometimes be gruff, and sometimes they can be mean. Sometimes they can be people that you wouldn't give them the time of the day. And honestly, that's your problem. You got to get over it. You got to engage the people, and you got to talk to them in a way that's important and meaningful to them. And you can get through. You know, a lot of times people put up these barriers and you can't get through. If you're chasing foreclosures, you're chasing motivated sellers, they're dealing with a lot of stress. And you can't be phony about it either, because, I mean, they can see through that too. But so you got to genuinely be interested in what their issues are. And there's lots of ways of showing that. By the way, if I'm talking to you and you're typing on your phone, and then I say, well, you're not paying attention to me, because that's what my head is saying. And then you're going to come back and say, oh, I can multitask? BS. You know, I'm going to say BS. You can't multitask. If I ain't important enough for you to listen to me, then you don't know me, you don't trust me, you don't like me. Why am I even here?
Thank you, Ray. Thank you.
Yeah.
He actually did that too. When he had me trapped in the car with him that day, where we did the role playing going back and forth, he actually did that. And he was talking to me, and I was texting and listening to him at the same time. And he literally, I had to put my phone down and listen. But, you know, I realized in the moment, I kind of gave him a smart remark, because, I mean, that's just a little bit who I am. I'm very sarcastic. But then you got to realize that that's part of the relationship, you know, and it's out of respect. And my grandmother used to do the same thing to me. If I was not looking at her when she was talking, I was not listening to her. And, you know, so it's just a part of relationships. Relationships, we can go on for 2-3 hours talking about how important relationships are. I'll just give you a really quick story. I'm not going to go down a 10-foot rabbit hole, but a quick story. I had a deal about 6 years ago that I took one of my buyers to, and he actually passed on it. And so I kept shopping it and everything. And then another buyer went out, and we made a deal, and I told him not to blast my deal out. Well, I get a call 2 days later from the first buyer that I took, and he's like, hey, what'd you do with that property? I just got it in my email. Somebody's blasting it out. And if I didn't have that relationship with that first buyer, I would not have known what was going on. I would not have been able to get control of the deal. And that's just one aspect of relationships. So it's very important to us to have these relationships. We're seeing a lot right now on Facebook. People are like, I'm building my buyers list, drop your email. And it's like, no, meet with people, connect, get their phone number, direct message them, set up a time, set up a Zoom call, set up a lunch, and go build that relationship, because that's where it is in relationships. Last thing I want to say is, if you're looking to want to partner with us and you want a relationship with us and grow, drop the word partner, and that'll let us know. That'll be the key word, partner. And I'll reach out to you and let you know how we can start our business relationship and grow together. That's really all I have. I did just get a notification that we don't have any questions yet. So we are at 6:45. We got about 5 minutes left to get your questions in. So if you have any questions on anything that we talked about, alternatives, knowledge, expert, time, perception, or relationships, drop them in the comments and Hal will get those to me.
And we didn't talk about expert, but we'll talk about that maybe on a coaching call or something. And so what do we have coming up on the agenda, on the schedule?
So for those that are in San Antonio, next Thursday, not tomorrow, but tomorrow night we have our open coaching call. So if you have not been invited to that and you've never been on one of our calls, then drop open call in the comments and I will make sure that you get invited. So tomorrow night is our open coaching call. Next Thursday in San Antonio, we're going to have Robin Thompson. She's the rehab queen, and she's going to be talking about rehabbing properties in 2022. And she's also going to be talking about Airbnbs. And let me tell you, I had the privilege of seeing Robin in person a few years ago when she was here in Houston. And my gosh, if you have not seen her, you need to go listen to her. You will definitely pick up some nuggets from her. You think you get nuggets from us, you'll get some. She's just, I love her presentation, the way she presents herself. So that's in San Antonio.
That's going to be that. To register for that, you go to alamoria.org, and RIA is REIA, alamoria.org.
We'll have all the links in the comments, so you can go register to that. That's going to be next Thursday, the 11th, and then on the 13th, if you're in Houston, we'll have our general meeting on November 13th. It's a Saturday from 8:30 to noon, and that'll be over around the Galleria area, right? Not too far from where you are. Again, we'll have those links as well. And then we have a bus tour coming up December 4th, where we're actually going to go tour some property.
Okay, well, great.
Those are our upcoming events. And then we have some things coming up in January that we're going to be putting out. We got lots of great things coming up. So you are definitely in a great spot. We're doing as much as we can to help as many investors, wholesalers, flippers as we possibly can, because we're in a prime time. We only got a couple of minutes left. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Ray, and I hope you forgive me and don't fire me for this, but I did a post up in the group today. I don't know if you saw it or not, but talking about opportunity. We're starting to see some signs of what's coming ahead in the market. There's been a whole lot of buzz this week about Zillow. I don't know if you've seen that, but they have stopped their house, but Zillow's not buying any houses right now. They have stopped that. They will continue.
In the class said that. Yeah, they said they stopped being iBuyers. So I haven't read anything on it yet, but.
Yeah, well,
they said they're laying off 2,000 people and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they're laying off 25% of their force, their staff, and they have stopped buying. Now, they will still close on the properties they've committed to, but they're not going after any more properties.
Are they sitting on inventory that we need to be talking to them about?
They probably could. They probably could be. That would probably be a good thing to look into.
Yeah, I think that people don't realize that real estate's local, right? You've got to drill down and you've got to find out what the rules are in that community, and you got to make them work for you. You can't, for example, in Texas, they oftentimes don't escrow for HOA taxes. Mortgage companies don't, because they're not real common in other parts of the country. So they totally skip that and miss it. And so there's a lot of things that you need to know about your local community. There's some basics, a foreclosure is a foreclosure, a title problem is a title problem, but the specific laws and stuff can change from state to state. So you have to have a little bit of knowledge of how that stuff works. So, okay. Well,
Hey,
good.
quick question, Ray. Do you remember Emma, one of our superstar volunteer students? She's asking about a book that you referenced. Do you remember referencing a book earlier in this conversation?
Not in this conversation. I don't think I referenced a book. I've told her about books in the past. Is it about this conversation, or I referenced the guy that wrote the 10 Power Principles, which was Dr. Henning.
Okay. Is that the name of the book, the 10 Power Principles?
No, I don't know what the book was. He was the author of that, and I did quite a bit of reading. And when it comes to negotiation is kind of a thing that fits across everything. And so a lot of times it's not written specifically about real estate. So if you're dealing with something like that, then you've got to apply to real estate. For example, in Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, he talks about hostage negotiation. But some of the things that he talks about, not some of the things, virtually everything he talks about when it comes to negotiation applies directly to real estate and what we do as real estate investors. So there's lots of good stuff out there on negotiation, but Ed Henning wrote the Power Principles in negotiating, and when I went across them, I thought, it didn't just jump out at me at first, but I realized that all these elements are so critical and so important. We have to understand that they're actually playing a role in it. And if you don't know that they're playing a role in it, for example, if you don't know what the power of time can do and how you should restructure your offers or schedule your offers or time your offers, or come up with a strategy for an offer, if you're not aware that time often plays a really big important role in the outcome, you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities. You're probably not putting your deals together the way you should be, because you don't understand that power principle, just like all the other power principles.
Okay, that's gonna wrap it up. Oh, and then the other thing that we have going on too, on our calendar of events, is our weekly radio show on Saturday mornings, which we broadcast on YouTube as well. So if you're not connected on our YouTube channel, check it out. We have comments in the Facebook group, links to our YouTube channel, or you can go to massivepassiveshow.com and it'll take you to our YouTube channel as well. So you can see us live every Saturday, 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So.
Well, cool. And we'll start something. We'll probably keep a running journal of what's going on with Airbnbs, especially on our coaching calls, because since that is such a big exit strategy, it's something that we've got to embrace. And for some people, that's just going to be the right thing for them to be getting involved in. So,
well, cool.
Okay.
On that note, it is 6:54, so we're gonna go ahead and head home because Ray has got a long drive across town, and probably in traffic, and I've got a little bit of a shorter drive, but I'm still gonna hit traffic. So I'm gonna head home. You guys take it easy. We will see you tomorrow night on the coaching call, and we'll see you right here next week. Bring a friend, and we'll see y'all later.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Hal.